All right, welcome guys. Today is October 10th of 2018, and we are doing number 3 on the Spa Accelerator Podcast, brought to you by Everable and Cassie Clinical Consulting. So this week, Luis has got some talk points that he wants to go over, so throw them at me.
Yeah, so Cassie and I, it's just Cassie and I today, and really we have been kind of in this journey, right? For those of you who know, Cassie and I work together, and we do all her marketing and advertising, and a lot of the times we're spearheading a lot of new things, right? I think for us, we're kind of like at the forefront of implementing new marketing tactics and strategies, and then really seeing what is working in today's market and taking that and then relaying it back to you all, right? Back to our audience to see, hey, what's working, what's not working, what can we do better? And today, that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about the recent insights and findings that we found in doing the last, I guess I want to say, like 3 months of us. We've been working together longer, but I want to say like these insights are a little recent.
Well, since you got married, and I got your time back since you got married.
True. And then from there, just kind of talking about those points. But stay tuned, guys. Listen in, because these are some really valuable stuff that Cassie and I have been finding out that is going to really help you guys improve on what you're currently doing in your practice right now. So the first thing that Cassie and I were talking about is just kind of some of the more recent insights and like how marketing and business work. And you had like a really interesting point before we started. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I pride myself in, I am very much a risk taker, and I really look at my market. I think I try to look at my market every day with a fresh perspective, like wake up and don't just do that same routine. Like I'm always looking for the way that I can grow. So it's funny, I have these aha moments, and I had one yesterday, and it's like Luis is saying, like I use my spa as a testing pad, really, because I work with so many other people that I have these ideas and I test them in my spa, make sure that they're going to work, and then I can share them with others. And so as I'm testing new things, sometimes I run into walls, and sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm always just looking for the next thing to make this work. And so yesterday, I was saying we are having a lot of no-shows and cancellations, not only in my own market, but I'm hearing this among, clients, like 50%. And so that's troubling. And so I'm looking at the inside, and I'm like, well, maybe it's the talk track. Maybe we need to say this, and at this point we need to do this, and maybe it's the amount of times that we're calling. Like maybe we should call 2 times on day 4 instead of 1. And so I'm doing all of these different, like tests, just really trying to figure it out. And I call Luis, and he says, well, why don't we change the radius? So right now we're marketing to 50 miles outside the spa. Let's pull that in back tighter. And I was like, I just ran into 10 walls, and it really is that simple. I know that that's going to work. That's exactly it. Is we have, a value proposition. We are telling people why they would drive so far, but honestly, Coolsculpting is showing up in every neighborhood. So you're also fighting against others' value propositions, and people are marketing more aggressively because Coolsculpting is allotting more marketing dollars to everybody. I really think, and I'm going to get off on a tangent here, but when Allergan created the Cool Partners, I really think that was kind of a snuffing out of success. So what Allergan wants is everybody to be mediocre, so everybody can pay for their machines, but they, nobody's doing better than and putting anybody else out of business. They want to keep everybody kind of at the same place. Yeah. So it's become more difficult to rise above with the Cool Partners, I think, especially for clients who started out right there at like premier and preferred levels. It kind of just pulls it, weights you down. So anyway, I think that that's exactly it. And it's like, I need people to bounce things off of. If I hadn't said these things out loud, and as a side note, I think people spend time afraid to say things out loud. Like if I hadn't said that to you yesterday, then I would continue to change the follow-up, and I test things for 30 days. before I change them. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna twist this little knob and then go for 30 days. So I'm glad I have people to collaborate with too, because you can't just call your neighbor with Coolsculpting and be like, hey,
Yeah, and that's the thing I think we pride ourselves in, because we definitely want to be a partner, and we want to be there listening to all the feedback and make adjustments. And so 2 points to what you were saying, right? Number one is, one of the things when Cassie and I were talking, one of the things that I said was, you know what, sometimes we want to overthink and overanalyze like every single thing that is happening. And more often than not always, but more often than not, the simplest solution is the right answer, right? And it goes back to everything you just said. There's just a lot more competition. If we're asking people to drive 50 miles to come and see us, yes, we have a strong value proposition. And by the way, a lot of people don't have a strong value proposition, but Cassie does, right? Or even if you do have a strong value proposition, people struggle to communicate it over the phone, right?
And to train staff to, yes, because the bigger I grow, the more I'm having to recreate what I do in others. And quite honestly, as a business owner, you can't build a business model based on your personality, because there's a reason that you take on the amount of stress that you do. There's a reason that I'm at the position that I am, and expecting that out of others will be a fail. So it's like, that value proposition can be communicated really, really well by the business owner, but you have to really build a business model around 80% of what you will do and make that work.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then, so value proposition is huge for those of you who really don't have like a strong grasp of what value proposition is. And this is something we help all our clients kind of define in the onboarding stages of us working together. But the biggest thing, the easiest way to answer what is a value proposition, I always tell people is answer this question. If I'm your ideal prospect, why should I choose you versus your competitor? Right. So try to sell me on that. Like, why?
Right.
And
and I find it can't be scripted. So my value proposition when I talk to people is different than my staff's, but I work with them on defining why are you the best at what, and not being afraid to say it. And that's what I find with a lot of my staff too, is they kind of shy away from putting an exclamation point behind their value. And that's why we work so much on self in my practice and with my clients, is because that's a self-limiting kind of behavior and thinking, and it kind of spreads through the office. So really working on, like that, like, knowing that you're a badass. But the value proposition is huge at my spa. Like we have a lot of, and I tell people there's a fine line here. Like you don't want to go into bragging because people don't care. They don't care about all of your accolades, but they do care if you believe in you. And that's really what you have to communicate. So the words don't matter as much as the knowing that you're the best. And anyway, pulling that radius is going to be great, because it also with my staff will kind of drop, because they hear the question, well, why would I drive that far? I know somebody's doing, I saw it at my dermatology office. Why would I, there's no way I'm driving that far. Oh yeah. Okay. Like, it's like they lose that argument really fast in their own minds. They believe, that like I wouldn't drive that far either. So anyway, it sometimes is so much more simple. And it does take collaboration. It really does take having people in your position to talk to.
For sure. And that's the thing, guys. Like, I mean, if you have a problem right now that you're kind of struggling with, well, one, talk to someone about it. But two, like really take a step back, take a step back and like get out of the weeds, kind of like what Cassie was saying, and think about, okay, well, what is the simplest answer? Like if I put myself in my client's shoes and I think like them, what is like the easiest thing? And you know what? In today's age, like with Amazon and everything, and like apps that deliver whatever you want to your front door, like convenience is number one. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Like you want to be convenient to your clients. And a lot of the times that just means pulling the radius. So now we're just going to we're going to experiment with a 25-mile radius. And then Cassie, I mean, you mentioned that you had done a report last year to see where your clients were coming from,
Yeah.
and you had confirmed that, what was it, like 60 or 70?
It was 65. So 65% of my clients came from within a 25-mile radius, but the other 35% were definitely direct, like they came in for marketing. But you have to think about the lifetime value of the client as well. So if somebody drives 50 miles to get Coolsculpting with you, you might spend $1,000 in marketing to get them on the table treating. But are they going to come back? Even are they going to come back for their follow-up appointments? So are they going to be as satisfied as they could possibly be if they're not coming in and taking pictures? So, really thinking about what's best for the clients. There are plenty of people within 25 miles for us to treat. So yes, I found that 35% of mine came from outside that 25-mile radius. But I think that very easily I could have gotten that 35% from inside. And what it told me was if more than half of my business is coming, if I'm marketing as strong as I am, and more than half is coming from inside that 25-mile radius, then I really should put about 85% of my budget inside there, really, because it'll cost less in acquisition in the end too.
Yeah, and I mean, like, we're not saying that you shouldn't maybe do some brand awareness campaigns like outside of that radius. But you definitely want to take like an 80-20 approach to it, where like you know where your money's coming from, get that low-hanging fruit, and like even if you feel you've saturated that, like honestly, that's probably not the case. Like, even if you have a small demographic, there's just so much of an audience there that honestly, and I tell this to people all the time, like the number one thing that practices are missing out on right now is educating the market. And that is how you position yourself as an expert, as a celebrity, because there are so many, like, even though people see Coolsculpting ads, they see the billboards, they see the banners, whatever, there's still so many misconceptions about Coolsculpting,
right?
That there is just right now such a huge opportunity to educate the market, and in doing so, position yourself as an expert, and then getting their business, right?
Right.
So that's another thing. And, well, real quick, like, I think one of the biggest points here that we were talking about is like, this is how business works, guys. Like, something that you were doing a year ago might not be as effective, today, right? And part of like doing marketing and business is that you can't just look at the last 30 days and then just make rash decisions, right? Or not even 30 days. I want to say maybe because I know some people will look at the last 7 days and they'll make some crazy decisions, right? Or the last day and they'll make some crazy decisions.
Right. No, I have some of those. They like the last phone call, they hear somebody say, "Oh, well, I'm irritated with your ads." And so they're like, turn the ads off. Or you called me too much. One person says that and it's like we get stuck in, and I was saying earlier, we can't see the forest for the trees kind of mode. We also jump into assumptions. So I find myself, even yesterday, I went into practice with somebody call in. And so I did consultations yesterday. Well, I closed a $16,000 consultation.
Yeah.
Before I went in there, I was having my staff shadow me. And I was talking to my staff member and I was like, and this woman was interested in her face and her body. And so I was like, okay, so which one do you think, which angle should I come? And we both talked about, thank goodness I presented her a whole price, because I was assuming she was going to do either or. And I was doing that thing that I counsel people not to do. Don't assume that how valuable this procedure is, how long they've been waiting to be able to do something like this. And furthermore, like you're saying, the market is becoming more educated. So we assume that our client, our target avatar is a 50-year-old, working female who's had med spa, somebody you've seen in your office before. We're assuming that person's the best. And what I find is it's not. It's the people who are just learning about our industry, because our industry is growing such that household, like normal moms are able to come and get services with us. And we just kind of exclude them. It's such an easy thing to do. Building awareness around that assumption thing is so huge. Like next time you hear yourself say, well, that client can't afford it. We make the judgments when we see people with our ads. We see, the way that they fill out a lead form and make a rash judgment of, like as if we know where it's going to go. And it's so important to remain curious as a business owner, as a treatment provider, as a human being. Like what's life if you already know what's coming? Like being open to something new, something amazing. So anyway, this client yesterday that I had really taught me a lot. That the lesson's never all the way learned too. Like as much as I can understand it when I talk about it, I still find myself right back there in those things that I teach people all day long not to do.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that kind of brings us into the conversation of well, like you said, really defining and taking a closer look into who our ideal customer or ideal avatar is, right? Where like as maybe a year ago, or or maybe recently, right, we had an idea like, okay, well, or Coolsculpting tries to tell us, or whatever, like who the ideal customer is, right? But a lot of the times, and we come in with this mentality, and anybody who doesn't look like that, who doesn't fall into that, we kind of exclude. But here's the thing, like every market's different, every suburb is different, right? So it's like you can't make these rash judgments, and
your value proposition makes you different. You can't you can't take data out of anybody else's business and let it define your business if you're relying on that. I found myself, like reading sales follow-up, what am I trying to say? Experiments and studies. And I can't map that onto my business because the people who are coming in for me or are coming in for you. And your value is different than your neighbors. So your demographic immediately changes. Who you connect with is unique to you. And so people, I hear my clients all the time say, well, we need to target, the upper middle class to high class. We need to target people who are attorneys and, movie stars and radio personalities, TV personalities. When in fact, our clients, like ask your next 5 clients what they do. They're school administrators, they're nurses, they're, I had a lady who worked at Burger King do a full facelift. She was a manager at Burger King and she saved up her money, so assumptions are deadly.
Yeah. And so I think, I think based off what we have been talking about, I think we've kind of summed it down to talk about or to define who our 3 best customers are right now, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what you guys need to do. You need to define and a lot of people always say that there's one avatar. Honestly, there's more than that, right? I always say that you want to look at like the top 3. And I think that's something that Cassie and I have done. And we're going to start shifting our advertising to target those people. But then again, that doesn't mean that 3 months from now, it's going to stay those 3 people. And that's my point is you always want to keep making iterations. And that's what I was talking about where that's how business and marketing works. You have to keep making changes as the market develops because variables are changing every single day, every single day.
Think about the way your practice changes. Like a staff member leaves and a new staff member comes in. That just changed your avatar. Yeah. That just changed who's going to connect. If you guys are not doing or not having audits or observations done to your consultations and your phone calls, then you're missing out on what's changing in your market. You're missing out on what's changing in your practice because the feedback that I get from my staff versus what I see when I look are 2 totally different things. They're not able to communicate to you just the subtle nuances that really change things, that really, when you're aware, like we found, with this radius thing, you have to dig in, you have to listen, or you have to have somebody do it.
100%. So just to kind of give you guys a little, we're not done yet, but to give you a quick summary, we talked about that we had a few points. So point number 1 is understand how marketing and business works, that you have to keep making iterations upon iterations. What worked, in the last 3 months, last 6 or last 12 might not be different what made today. So you have to keep, analyzing the data, keep making changes as your business and the market develops. The other thing is, what we've done and to kind of looking at testing to decrease the amount of no-shows that come into the practice. So we're going to be testing out, obviously a smaller radius, and think about convenience. How can you make it more convenient for your clients to come in? And then part of that is building your value proposition. What is your value proposition? Make sure that you talk about your value proposition every time you communicate to your clients. And then the other point, number 3, is defining who your clients are and continue to iterate and just, first of all, if you're not like analyzing that, you need to start doing that. But 2, be aware that it's going to constantly change. So keep doing it. And then a point number 4 that I guess we should talk about is like, well, I guess everything kind of sums it up where it's like what gets measured gets managed. So you want to make sure, again, going back to all these things, like if we weren't measuring these things, then we wouldn't be like learning about these insights and then managing those, that data, right?
Right.
So it's really important.
We were talking about this yesterday. It's like the next thing that I'm doing is I am going to put a form in front of all of my phone call people where when we hear information like recent death in the family or I'm a teacher, like really starting to segment out the different avatars because there's so many, honestly, like there's a top 3, but they're kind of generalized. And within those 3, they get more and more specific. And so anyway, data, if you have a question or if you have a struggle or a worry, think about what numbers could I grab to give me the truth about this rather than going day to day on emotion and feelings. I feel, for example, what I said earlier, like I feel like people are irritated because we're calling too much. Well, how many times have you actually heard that versus how many times have you actually called people? Get the number. Is it less than 1%? It just bothers you because it bothers you, not because it's really an issue. So yeah, you gotta find out what the issues actually are and gauge the measurement and have the measuring stick so that then you can gauge progress.
And can you talk a little, and this was going to be our next point, like about like kind of follow-up. So people, like some of the research that you've been doing and looking into as far as like how many times should you do follow-up and kind of like what you find out recently?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've found that, okay, so here's a great example. Personally, if I submitted a lead form and somebody called me 10 times in the next 7 days, I would go to their competitor just to not give them the business because it would irritate me that much. But I'm not really my avatar. I'm like kind of sort of, but I don't see me in my business. My avatar is different. So I can't go off of what I feel and map that onto my decisions business-wise. I have to get data. So my data shows that within the first 24 hours, calling up to 4 times even, like up to 4 times, has only helped the numbers, not made them worse. I'm testing longer term, like what happens on day 2 through day 7 if we call every day versus if we text every day. And so I'm gathering that data too, because honestly, I really just don't know right now if it hurts or helps. My research indicates that with high value tickets, anything after 24 hours hurts. But even assuming that that's true, because that research was not done on this market. It was not done on aesthetic services. So if a study was done and it was, 50% men, 50% women, well, that doesn't match where I'm at because my calls are not 50% men and women. So honestly, I was actually telling Jeff yesterday, we've got a new data gathering tool that's really going to get into the specifics, like really, really segment out every single number that I can think of that I will know. And in 90 days, we'll have a lot of information. And in 9 years, we'll have a whole lot of information. And so we can continue to iterate and really hone in on what the perfect schema is.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And so for everybody listening, like the study, what it talked about was that after, I think it was 20 or 24 hours, like
20 hours.
Heard it, like it's good to call like 3 to 4 times, but after those 20 hours, it actually, if you keep calling, it's going to hurt your chances of ever getting in touch with that person. I
feel like that's probably true.
Yeah.
But then when people don't answer that first day, I hate for my staff never to call them again. So it's really hard for me to let this go this way. But again, and the study, it was done. This study particularly was done about 5 years ago. So I really think that the data that they gathered then, like people, I think will be more receptive to links and texts, to more web-based behaviors, because that's how we interact with people. And if my phone rings constantly, and I'm, on the computer, then it's just like, it's an irritation. So much communication is done not through actual phone calls. Now it's best because you can feel people and you can hear people. So I do believe personal conversation is the goal, but we have sold Coolsculpting and had people come in with no more than text back and forth, appointment confirmation, appointment setting, everything through text message and email. So
yeah, and that's what the study suggested, that after the 20 hours, like you want to try other follow-up methods besides phone calls. So you want to implement text messages and you want to implement email. And I have a big I'm very passionate because I know it works, guys. Like if you're not using text messages right now to communicate, and I'm not talking about one-way text messages that just get sent out that are automated. I'm talking about like two-way text messages, like implementing that medium to communicate with your patients or future clients. Like today, you're missing out on a lot of business because, again, going back to convenience, you want to make it convenient for your client to communicate with you. Here's the other thing. A lot of people use email. Email has I think one of the lowest open rates right now. I think if it's not 50, it's less than that. Guess what text messages has? It has a 98% open rate. So you're going to get a lot more eyeballs on that text message. And then people just want to communicate. People don't, at least now, like millennials, right? And we're talking about millennials, so, at least for me. But obviously other markets might be a little bit different. But like people don't want to talk to people. At least people like.
Well, it's surprising because again, I don't want to build my systems on millennials. I'm technically a millennial. I actually hate that because I found that out and I was like, no, I'm not, because I don't like millennials. So what's that? But anyway, I'm technically a millennial, so I'm not really my target right now. Now that doesn't mean that I might not target millennials, because who's a better client than somebody, that does everything online, that's not afraid to purchase and make big purchases online. So I'm not nixing that at all. But that $16,000 package that I sold yesterday was a 75-year-old woman, and her appointment and everything, first off, she responded and filled out a lead form on Facebook. Then she went through text message. She actually looked back. She had texted back and forth with my staff about 6 times and asked for the appointment through text message. They did make a contact phone call, but I listened to the phone call and it was almost like she was less capable to put this whole thing together over the phone. There was more confusion on her end. And so even the 75-year-old woman, she was more comfortable and confident in moving forward with this purchase through electronics, through technology.
Yeah. And then one of the other things that we're going to start experimenting with is just implementing an online booking calendar. So after somebody kind of fills out the application, give them an option to just schedule online right now. Mm-hmm. We still recommend that you all call and obviously build some rapport with that person. But that way you also apply the convenience, or give them the convenience of scheduling online and never even having to text or phone call with someone. And I think statistically, I think there was I can't remember if it was a 58 or already in the 60s of people that actually prefer to just schedule online if they can.
Right.
And so we're going to be experimenting with that. We'll let you know what the numbers look like once we have the data, but it should be.
Now, I've done this before, and so there's an art to this for sure, because people do know that Coolsculpting is expensive, and so it's easy to talk themselves out of an appointment if there's not a connection made. So I've experimented with this before, and this time we're going to give it a little bit more TLC but allowing them to look at their schedule and tell us when's a good time, and then us making that fit. Again, making it convenient for the client. I'm going to go off on a whole other subject. We can cover this another time, but I noticed my front desk yesterday, somebody called and wanted a consultation, and there was a 15-minute. So he was like, oh, well, we can't see you until next Thursday. And there has to be a system to change that, because we have got to meet these people where they are. We've got to let them come in, even if we end up in the weeds, even if we end up stressed out, with a high no-show rate anyway. And we're testing this too with double bookings with our cold audience generated leads.
And think about it, like, even when you say that to someone, it's like, well, okay, like, it's kind of offensive to like a certain point, you know what I mean? Like, and here's the thing, like, I tell people all the time, it's like competition is so fierce that you can't, like, providing a plus service is key, because you know, like, people at the end of the day, they go to a medical spa because they want to feel pampered, right? They want to feel better than leaving than when they came in. So if they're not going to get that class A treatment from the staff, from like just going in there and feeling awesome, they're going to find somebody else, you know, like,
and fast.
Yeah, you know.
And they judge you over the phone so fast. So it's great though, because we're in an industry that people don't pay attention to, and we talked about doing this on a future show. People don't pay attention to that first touch point enough, and it can be made, like, it can be so easy for you if you can master that front desk phone stuff. Then because people do call 10 people. If they're thinking about making a $5,000, $10,000 purchase decision, they're going to call 10 people. And what they feel over the phone makes it or breaks it with whether or not they show up. They probably, I would say, and I'd love to see numbers on this, on a purchase like Coolsculpting or like a, full facial rejuvenation procedure, they probably call at least 3 people, but they probably only go to 2 so they're ruling people out just by the first, just what they feel when you say hello.
Sure. So definitely. And that's the thing, like I tell people all the time, like, a lot of people don't pay enough attention to their front desk. Like, and guys, like, it's the first impression that somebody has of your business. And if it's not a good one, they're just going to go somewhere else.
Right.
If it's not a good experience, they're going to find somebody else, again, for the reasons that we just mentioned before. And it's so huge, like, making sure that your staff is trained and they sound pleasant on the phone, they're kind and caring, but not just that they know how to convert the call to a consult, that they have that training and that experience. Right. So that's... And
no hold, like putting people on hold to find the right person, that's a bad idea. So, people don't hold well.
There's horror stories. I've seen horror stories when it comes to people handling the phones. It's so bad. But
we'll have to share some of that.
We're planning on doing an episode where we share some bad phone calls.
This training that I have coming up for my clients, it's funny because when they did testimonials afterwards, and I was listening to their feedback on the course, and we took in little feedback surveys, and I don't intend to spend the whole time on phones, but apparently that was what everybody felt most confident with when they left, was phones, because it's the most important thing. You can have the best treatment, you can have the best service, you can have the best lobby, you can have the best everything. And if your phones aren't on point, then nobody's going to know.
Yeah. And you know what? You're losing out on money. Like, that's like the most important thing. And I see this a lot with like doctors, where it's like they don't pay attention to their front desk, where it's like, guys, like, if your front desk, they're the gate. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Like, they pay for trainings for all of, like, it's funny because in every clinic I see this, everybody who pays attention to training, like, understands I have to keep my staff trained and excited. They're spending that money and investing in the providers. And there's rarely, ever any training for the front desk, other than the rep coming in and sitting down with them for a couple hours. Front desk training is extensive. Like, the phone training needs to be really, really, really in depth. And if it's not, then nobody knows about these awesome providers that you have that are doing cutting edge things. I also wanted to point out that, yes, we can make more money if our front desk is efficient and effective, but think about that client. And this is where I take people when I'm training them. Think about your favorite client. Think about the client who, you ran into at the grocery store and they ran up to you hugging you because their life was changed because of what you provided them in your clinic. That person is honestly typically scared to come into the med spa in the first place. That person who wants a transformation, who's looking for that, they're scared. They need somebody to understand them and hear them. And so if front desk is busy and trying to get off the phone really fast and just set an appointment, this person talks themselves out of coming. Because, I heard it just recently. I walked into a consultation and a woman was so happy with her Coolsculpting results. And the first thing that she said to me after we introduced ourselves was, well, I know I'm not I'm not the ideal candidate for this procedure, but it worked really well for me. And I said, well, why do you say you're not the ideal candidate? And she said, well, everybody that I see doing this online is, practically perfect. They start out that way. And I pointed out to her that the only reason you see these people is because they're the ones that are okay being filmed, when in fact our clients are just like you. They want to look better in their clothes. They feel insecure, romantically with their spouse. So that person is thinking, think about all the ads that go out there. It's pretty women in bathing suits. The person who we have the opportunity to really help, they won't come in if they don't feel very comfortable over the phone. They need more attention. And so, yes, it equates to more money, but it also equates to more satisfaction, to more professionally feeling worth. And
really at the end of the day, making a bigger impact. And that's what business is. You want to make an impact, you want to provide value, and that's how
then you make money.
You know what I mean? Yeah, 100%. So I think that was a really, really good point. We didn't plan that one, but that came out. That was good.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so the last insight that we have for today is, one last point before we move on to that one in regards to the research we were doing in regards to follow-up. And I have an interesting insight where, as I mentioned before, right now, when we generate a lead for our clients, we send them a series of text messages, and they're all automated. They stop if the person replies. But the way that we do them is that they are two-way at the same time. So they're automated. The person replies, then you can reply back to them through that same interface, which is really, really neat. Now, something that we did that was actually a mistake actually turned into a really interesting insight that I wanted to share with you all. Because normally the way we had it before was that we would send out a text message, and then we would wait 24 hours and we would send out another one, wait 42 hours, send another one, and so on and so forth, right? And there was a bug with the system we ended up using, and it would send out a text message 5 minutes after the lead was generated. And then what ended up happening is that about 5 or 6 hours later, it sent out the message that was supposed to be sent out the second day. And what we noticed was that there was a lot more, there was a higher response when people got that second text message. And so again, going back to the whole point of taking a more aggressive approach within the first 20 hours of a lead being generated, how that can actually improve your response rate, which as a result will increase your your consultation rate or your appointment rate. So another key finding there that I think really fortifies what we were talking about before, where you wanna build some urgency up front. If they said they're interested, then build some urgency, right? Really reply back to them, and because obviously if they're interested, really hit them up. After the 24 hours in a respond, okay, take a more laid back approach. I always say deliver strong call to actions in the first 2 days. And then if they don't respond to that, then make it more conversational. Because here's the thing, and I was talking to, this is funny, I was talking to my mother-in-law about this because she works with us now. And she's had a tummy tuck before, and obviously we talk about Coolsculpting, and she loves it, right? But one of the things she's like, what, sometimes I just feel really insecure because, you opt into these things, and you opt in because you want to learn more, you're interested, but then you have some, but then there's people you're trying to reach out to you and trying to sell you and all that stuff. Whereas at the end of the day, and I say this to people, it's advertising, all it is a series of mini conversations, right? You want to have conversations with people. And again, going back to our whole philosophy of we do business with people, not with other businesses, and we do business with people we know, we like, and we trust. And then you want to educate people at the same time, right? So going back to that, it's the way that we do our text messages right now is that they're call to action. If they're not ready, it doesn't mean they're not interested. They're just not ready. So or they're scared, right? So what we do is we take more of an engagement approach where it's more hey, well, tell me a little bit about your situation. What areas were you interested in? Or, hey, did you have any questions that I could answer for you? It's just more laid back. You try to get them to engage and respond. And then once they respond, that's when you can kind of initiate a conversation with them, call them on the phone or keep texting them, and then schedule them beyond that, right? It's just that thing, like people up front, they're more often than not, they're scared. Like they're afraid.
They don't know you. They don't know the procedure. And I tell people there's two things that people have to have in order to make a purchase decision. They have to trust the product and they have to trust the provider.
Yeah.
People don't build trust these days in an instant. I mean, sometimes like that value proposition, if you deliver it correctly and you really believe it, then sometimes you can get trust like in an instant. But often, and especially if it were me or if it were my mother or mother-in-law, it would take a series. And that's why, we kind of hit on this. And I think this is something that we assume.
But yeah, go ahead and go.
We assume that people follow up like softly with nurturing over time to these leads that come in. It's at least twice a month that somebody who's been in my system for more than 6 months comes in and makes a purchase decision, because it's like I'm scrolling through Facebook. I see Coolsculpting, like, oh yeah, I've been thinking about that. Oh, well, my tax return comes, or I know I'm going to get this money from something. And so they go ahead and fill the lead form out, but they're not ready. So they stand you up on it. I don't know how many people have come in and purchased after they've no-showed twice.
A lot.
This,
that's your next point, where like that's been the insights that we've kind of found. Whereas like we're seeing a lot of people that have been in the system for the last 3 to 6 months that didn't buy when they came in, but they bought 3 to 6 months after. And that is huge, because, and I was telling this to somebody else yesterday on my calls, where it was like, right now when we generate a lead, like a lot of people just look at the first 7 to 14 days. And then if that lead doesn't,
and then they drop them, right?
They forget about it. And I'm like, we're just leaving so much money on the table, because again, what you're saying, like people, they want it, but they just might not want it right now, or they just can't get it right now. They're ready to make the purchase, right?
And you keep sending those things. Like I am rarely in my spa anymore. And I walked in yesterday and a woman was treating, and I walked in and I was like, hi, I'm Cassie. And I never even present myself as the owner, because I just don't like to. So I walked in, I was like, hey, I'm Cassie. I just kind of want to check out your treatment plan and see how you're doing and meet you. I appreciate your business, that kind of thing. And when I started to introduce myself, she was like, I know who you are. I watched all your videos before I came in here. I watched you for a year before I came in here. So people are, when they're interested, they're watching and they're choosing online. They're choosing who to go to. And honestly, your competitors are doing video too. Like everybody's kind of onto this video thing. And I tell people a lot, like in any market, I think I've worked across market lines. So I've worked in different industries with my business systems and strategies. And I find that if you're not innovating, then you're by default imitating. You're following the leader. And if you're not the leader, you have no access to that big amount of money that's out there. The leaders in this industry are getting about 90% of the available revenue, whereas the followers are getting 10% and splitting that up. And of the industry, only 10% are leaders. So 10% are getting 90%, whereas 90% are getting 10%. And that might be why you're having, some trouble paying the bills, is because you're following the guy who did it. We got to be asking our clients, getting to know, and really just being open to what's next and having that idea and not being fearful to go for it. I think fear of failure keeps a lot of people back from being in that 10%.
And I think a big thing is just taking action. Like you might not know what's going to work. That's okay, because you're experimenting. But the biggest thing here is just take action and try it. Try it for 14, 30 days.
And systemize it. Make sure it's even like if you tell somebody if you tell your clients you're going to give a referral fee, we're going to give you $50 if you send in a friend, and then you do that for a couple months and then you forget about it, or you get all these leads, you pay for a bunch of leads from Facebook and you call them all once and send them an email. Like follow through is so important. Putting the systems in place to make sure that what you design will be carried out. And easily if possible. So, that's like follow through and then think of the next idea and just try it. What do you have to lose?
So try the new ideas, and then going back to this like insight that we had, like implement the nurture sequence that you need, because like I was saying, like 14 days, and then a lot of people forget about the lead. But no, like, right? So it's like, what happens after 30 days? What happens after 60? What happens after 90? And so on and so forth, right? And then what systems are you implementing within that time span to continue to nurture your audience?
Right.
And
systemizing this stuff, guys. Most practices that I talk to have a monthly newsletter that goes out. So they send a monthly newsletter and it tells you the specials and it has a little blog maybe. You can systemize this. It's some front end work. You can pay somebody to do it. That's what there's the guy I pay. But yeah, you can just put together a system so that it doesn't take any more time to get your message out, and you're treating everyone fairly. And I'm a big proponent of fair treatment. Like, if I'm going to give something to you, it needs to be the same. And your staff needs to know. Like, everybody needs to be able to recreate what you would do. So systemizing, it just can be automated. And I don't think people know that. I think, every month they put together this newsletter or whatever. And it's work. And then so some months they're so busy that they forget or they can't get to it. And so it's not, and as a customer, if I receive something that's not rhythmic, that feels like it was done on the fly, that, we're going to put something out in a couple days and it takes a couple weeks, as a customer, that feels unstable, and it's not somewhere that I'm going to put $5,000.
Yeah, no, 100%. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in today. I don't know how long it's been. I think we might have gotten over the 40 minutes.
Yeah, we
but
did.
I think we had probably one of our best episodes. I really enjoyed this one, and I think there was a lot of value in this one as well. So again, just to recap, we talked a lot about, I talked about a lot of things, and I think there's a lot of like key insights here. But just to sum it up, the top 6, I would say, number 1 is realize how marketing and business works. You want to be innovating, and you want to keep trying new things. And then you want to come to understanding that what was working a year ago might not be working today, and so you need to innovate and try new things. Right. Point number 2: what gets measured gets managed. So you want to make sure you're tracking all that data. Point number 3 is that if you're having current challenges, like for example the high no-show rate, take a step back and think about what is the simplest answer to that problem, right? And a lot of the times that will be the best solution. Number 4, keep defining who your customers are, right? If you don't know who they are, then define them. Simple as asking them a question. Hey, what do you do? Like, how old are you? You want to know what their profession is. Simple things like that. And if you have done that in the past, don't just close yourself off to say that is your only ideal avatar. You want to have your top 3 and realize that they're constantly going to be changing. So you never want to stop asking those questions, right? Point number 4, keep nurturing your audience. You understand that people that might come in as a lead will not be ready to buy till 30 to 90 days, maybe even beyond that. So keep nurturing them and implement the system so that you can continue to do that. And then last point, number 6, is experiment with your follow-ups, right? Experiment with being more aggressive in the front end within the first day of generating a lead, and then take a more consultative conversation approach towards the back end using text messages and email, and set those systems up, right? Set those systems up, set those automations up so that you and your staff are being a lot more efficient in your organization.
And then I want to throw in, I think you were on number 6 is next, but whatever number's next.
7.
Stay curious.
Stay curious.
Come into life like wondering what's going to happen instead of knowing. That's how you innovate, is staying open. And then lastly, use this group, guys. Like, you have collaborate, like that thing that I bounced off Luis yesterday, and I came to the most simple answer because my mind was just making it complicated. I can't do that unless I have a sounding board. And so this group is a sounding board for you. If you're not using it, it's free. Then,
We have a lot of great people in this group.
Yeah, I know these business owners, a lot of them. Some of them I don't. But you've got some winners. You've got some of the higher echelon of Coolsculpting and medspa practices in this group. So if you have something that's frustrating you, these are the people where you can throw it. And I get to that place, as a business owner where you're like, oh, I just have nobody to talk to about this. Nobody's going to understand. So you have a group of people here who will understand and maybe have some things that they've tried and done and that have worked.
Definitely. Use the group. Email us if you want to, ask us a question or shoot us a message on Facebook or something like that.
Or if you want to come on the show, email either of us, and I'll send you the questionnaire. If you have something that you want us to cover, also you can just shoot it to us.
Awesome. Yeah, and then if you want to subscribe so that you can get the every week we're going to be publishing an episode. If you want to subscribe so that you can get all the latest episodes as soon as they come out in your inbox, then go to medspa Pro, and then go ahead and click on the button on there and subscribe. And then we'll go ahead and make sure that we send you these episodes on a weekly basis. And again, if you want to be on that episode, you want to be featured as a guest, when you fill out that form, there's a little checkbox that says, yes, I would like to be featured as a guest, and then we'll reach out to you and we'll get you on the show. All right. Well, I think that's it. Do you have any last?
No, that's it. We'll see you next week.
Guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will be back with you next week. All right. Have a good one.